Keir Starmer has made a move that will, I don't know, it's hard to tell, isn't it, satisfy few, I think, because most people will think that he has either gone too far or not gone far enough. That is the curse, isn't it, in a sense, of the centrist. He's gone too far. No, he hasn't. He hasn't gone far enough. Do you know, that happens to me sometimes. I sit down as we prepare to tackle a particularly tricky subject together, and something occurs to me in the opening moments of my, what was it called the other day? Big pile of waffle. That hadn't occurred to me before. I mean, how do you find the people that think Keir Starmer's getting it about right? Well, I will find you today. You can call me on 0345 60 60973. But I think you can probably divide early reaction into he has gone too far or he has not gone enough. If you're not across the story, the details are as follows. The UK will formally recognise the state of Palestine. Problem one, nobody is entirely clear about precisely what that means. That, of course, may not be the point. Formally recognise the state of Palestine in September as a result of the, to quote the UK government, increasingly intolerable situation on the ground in Gaza. In order to prevent the recognition of the state of Palestine, Israel must abide by a ceasefire and commit to a two-state solution in the Middle East. Already 4, 5, 6 questions are presenting themselves, not least whether or not the leverage that Starmer seeks to exert has any prospect whatsoever of succeeding. He recalled his cabinet from their summer break to approve this plan after meeting with Donald Trump up in Scotland, and the cabinet has agreed on this proposal, with the UK now set to follow France in acknowledging statehood. I mean, one obvious question as well is how on earth would... what possible prospect is there of this actually succeeding, of Benjamin Netanyahu waking up this morning and going, do you know what, old Starmer's got a point actually, let's call a ceasefire, return to our commitment to the two-state solution and hopefully avoid the UK government's mooted recognition of the state of Palestine. But I want you to tell me why you think he's done it. 0345 60 60973 is the number that you need. Words are horribly inadequate in the context of this conversation. I don't know what words would fit, but I know the words I have don't. You've got the word proportionate, and of course its corollary, disproportionate. You've got the word sustainable, and its corollary, unsustainable. And there are people in the United Kingdom who divide pretty neatly along both of those lines, that Israel's actions in Gaza became disproportionate a long time ago, and people persuaded that Israel's actions in Gaza remain proportionate. Similarly with sustainability. And Keir Starmer's job is to govern the United Kingdom. He has, I think, like all the best world leaders, a proper interest in international relations, but his job is to govern the United Kingdom, and sometimes to use his position governing the United Kingdom to pursue the greater good. Already you could be forgiven for thinking that what he's done here has more to do with internal party politics or internal domestic UK politics than it does with anything that's going on in the ground in the Middle East, and you may well be right, which is why the question I'm asking is, why do you think he has done it, and what does it actually mean? What does it actually mean, either objectively or intellectually, or perhaps even more interestingly today, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is, well, I mean, is it threatening? Because threatening's another weird word in this kind of context, isn't it? Threatening to recognise the Palestinian state, as if that is something with which you punish Israel. In fact, I'm not sure you can challenge that analysis. The recognition of the Palestinian state in this context, despite it being a goal of previous Israeli administrations, a cherished goal of some previous Israeli prime ministers, Keir Starmer, the world has turned to such a degree that Keir Starmer now cites the recognition of a Palestinian state as a punishment for the current government of Israel. I don't know quite how that plays into broader trends of opinion and trends of thought, but unless you correct me pretty quickly, I don't know that using the word threatening is in any way controversial. Keir Starmer is threatening to formally recognise the state of Palestine unless the Israeli administration does what he wants them to do. And what he wants them to do is to stop the offensives in Gaza, to stop killing Palestinian people in Gaza. And then you've got the question of why you think he's done it, which leads us into probably slightly choppier territory. Has he done it with any realistic hope of his ultimatum being observed? Have a little think about that. It's an important question. What is the likelihood of this making any difference whatsoever to Benjamin Netanyahu's current trajectory? I would very sadly answer personally to that, no. No idea whatsoever. No chance whatsoever, forgive me. I can't quite see how there is a universe in which Benjamin Netanyahu responds to Keir Starmer's ultimatum, or indeed Emmanuel Macron's ultimatum, by going, OK, yeah, right, massive change, of course. Let's stop it now, and I will face the consequences of losing the support of the far-right members of my own cabinet. I will face the consequences of public opinion in Israel, whatever it may be. I will do what Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have ordered me to do, whatever the consequences will be. I'll throw in another factor for you, which would be the absence of Donald Trump's support from this position. And irredeemable wombat that Donald Trump may be, he is still the President of the United States of America. And the office, whoever holds it, carries enormous weight. Nowhere more so than in the Middle East, and nowhere more so than in relations between Israel and the Palestinian people. Without his support for any position, for any ultimatum, for any attempt to exercise leverage, without the support of the United States of America, I suspect that the call is relatively pointless. In which case, why do you think Starmer has done it? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. I should also tell you, because it's on the front page of the same newspaper from which I am filling you in on the roadmap for peace that Keir Starmer endorsed yesterday, that there is a large group of high-profile Israeli public figures, including academics, artists and public intellectuals, calling for, I quote, crippling sanctions, end quotes, to be imposed by the international community on Israel. 31 signatories, including Yuval Abraham. There's a former Israeli Attorney General called Michael Ben-Yair, Avraham Berg, a former Speaker of Israel's Parliament, a former head of the Jewish Agency, several recipients of the prestigious Israel Prize, which is the highest cultural honour that Israel can bestow. And they write of the starving the people of Gaza to death and contemplating the forced removal of millions of Palestinians from the Strip, and add the international community must impose crippling sanctions on Israel until it ends this brutal campaign and implements a permanent ceasefire. So then you have an even more complicated element of this conversation. Incredibly patriotic and passionate Israelis who don't think that what Keir Starmer has done goes anywhere near far enough. I think it would be a little bit glib to pursue the notion of who on earth he has made happy with this claim, but I think the argument that has been popularised on some right-wing newspaper front pages today, that it is designed to placate Hamas, falls apart when you look at the list of prominent Israeli public figures, including academics and public intellectuals, who haven't directly criticised what Keir Starmer has done, but who, when you read between the lines of the letter that they've sent to The Guardian this morning, you realise they don't believe that he, or indeed anybody in the international community, has gone far enough. I sat down with the Foreign Secretary last week, with David Lammy, and Eleanor, the producer, and I are a bit at odds over whether or not he would have known when he sat down that they were poised to make this announcement yesterday. I lean towards the idea that I missed a massive scoop normally, and that if I'd been on my toes a little bit more, I'd have been able to sense that something was in the wind in this area, and the Foreign Secretary had let it slip. And yet there's also the possibility that the letter submitted to the Prime Minister by a host of MPs, not just from his own party. How many parties do you think 221 MPs who wrote to the Prime Minister and indeed the Foreign Secretary last week urging them to recognise Palestine as a state came from? I don't know that anybody would get this right. How many parties? So 221 MPs sent a joint letter to the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary urging them to recognise Palestine as a state now. How many parties do you think those MPs came from? No? 9. I don't think, without checking my notes, I don't think I'd be able to name all 9 parties. But it gives you an idea of the plurality of opinion on this. It also reminds us of the role of the Balfour Declaration and the former mandatory power in Palestine, and the fact that the United Kingdom has backed a two-state solution since 1980 at least. Such a recognition, they wrote, would give that position substance as well as living up to a historic responsibility we have to people under the mandate. So you need a little bit of history as well to comment on some of this, and proper history, as in understanding what things are designed to do and what they actually end up doing. I might do a hook and tease on that, on what the 9 parties actually are, because it is a genuinely, an incredibly diverse selection of parliamentarians. So, I also want to ask you how big a deal you think it is, because that allows people who perhaps don't have a lot of skin in the game, for want of a better phrase, to observe, if you like, and to comment, to contemplate the question of why this has happened. How big a deal is it? And that is a question that opens up 2 doors. There's the question of how big a deal it is domestically and how big a deal it is internationally. Internationally, and listen, I'm just one person with one set of opinions. Unless you can persuade me otherwise, I don't think this is a very big moment internationally. In the context of it curtailing the carnage in Gaza, I think it might end up being meaningless. Knowing what we know about Benjamin Netanyahu's desperation to cling to power and the means by which he can do so, I can't quite see how this will change anything. Domestically, it seems to me to be, largely because it won't change anything internationally, unlikely to placate the people who feel that he should have gone much further, much faster, but can't generally tell you what that would look like. Until, of course, you remind yourself of what this a panoply of highly prominent Israeli public figures have said today, and they have said that the whole international community should be imposing, quotes, crippling sanctions, end quotes, on their own country, on their country, in order to stop the mounting horror unfolding in Gaza, most recently and most obviously in the context of starvation. So how big a deal is it, and why do you think he's done it? Hit the numbers now, you will get through, okay? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And I don't think, for what it's worth, I don't think anybody sensible or honest would be pursuing the idea that this is somehow rewarding Hamas. I hate to say this, but I think that Hamas and if you can call it an ideology that drives it, is so ineffably warped that the carnage is a bigger PR win for them than a ceasefire would be. I could be wrong, and I'll take advisement on that as well. But in the first instance, these are the questions, okay? Why do you think Keir Starmer has done this now?